This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
884 days ago, nearly 2.5 years ago, journalist Austin Tice disappeared while covering the war in Syria. The date was August 13, 2012, just 2 days after he turned 31 years old. A former U.S. Marine from Texas who later attended Georgetown University Law School, Tice has freelanced for the Washington Post, McClatchy newspaper, CBS, and other media outlets. He grew up in Houston, was the oldest of 7 children. He's the last known U.S. reporter held in Syria. Last year, 2 other U.S. journalists, James Foley and Stephen Sotloff, were beheaded by militants from the self-described Islamic State.
At the time of his disappearance, Austin Tice was one of only a few foreign journalists who continued reporting in Syria as the conflict intensified. He traveled extensively throughout the country, filing in-depth dispatches from the front line. In late July 2012, Austin Tice posted this report from Al-Tal, Syria, on his Facebook page.
Between the shells, it's been a quiet day today here in the town of Al-Tal, just north of the Damascus capital, as civilians have fled the town and Free Syrian Army rebel fighters have prepared for an anticipated government counterattack. Though the attack has yet to materialize, some fighters say that they think that last night's shelling was just a warning and that tonight should be even worse. From Al-Tal, Syria, for CBS, I'm Austin Tice.
Austin Tice posted that video on July 25, 2012. His Facebook page hasn't been updated since. Less than 3 weeks later, he disappeared. He was reportedly preparing to travel from Daraya near Damascus to Beirut, Lebanon, when he went missing. On the second anniversary of his disappearance, the Washington Post executive director Martin Barron said, quote, "Each month that passes without news of Austin deepens our concern for his well-being. His family has endured unimaginable pain as a result of his captivity. They have our support in their determined efforts to gain his release."
Well, for more, we are joined by Austin Tice's parents, Deborah and Mark Tice, here in New York City. And we're joined by Delphine Algand, U.S. Director of Reporters Without Borders. Her group has launched a public awareness campaign for Austin's release. According to Reporters Without Borders, Syria is the world's most dangerous country for journalists. Nearly 130 news and information providers have been killed since the conflict began in March 2011. We welcome you all to Democracy Now! Thank you. Mark Tice, let's begin with you. Talk about Austin, why he went to Syria, what he was doing there as a journalist, and now where you think he is.
Well, Austin is, our oldest son, our firstborn. He's a big man. He has big passions. He is committed to things, and when he gets committed, he takes action. So one of the things that troubled him about the Syrian conflict was the lack of credible, verifiable information about what was going on there. And Austin had spent some time in the region, had an affinity for the people there, and he decided that, he had the abilities and the skills to go to Syria, to see what was happening and communicate that to people in the U.S. and the Western world so that we would know what's happening.
So he freelanced for various papers.
He freelanced for various
networks.
papers. He did a lot of work for the McClatchy News organization, which has been incredibly supportive of us and Austin since he's gone missing. As he moved south in the country, he was able to deliver information and reports to a number of different organizations.
And Deborah Tice, what's it been like since his disappearance? First, when you got the news that he had disappeared, and what you've been able to get from the U.S. government in terms of his whereabouts and his situation.
Well, as far as his whereabouts, the government doesn't feel free to share that information with us. When he went missing, every day we thought, he'll be back tomorrow, next week. So going on 2.5 years, we've still had that kind of expectation, so our lives have pretty much been suspended in that tomorrow kind of living, where the main thing that Mark and I do is whatever we can think of to try to get Austin home.
Who do you believe is holding him?
We know who is not holding him. We know that he's not being held by ISIS or the terrorists of any kind. The Syrian government denies holding him. So that leaves us wondering who is holding him.
What does the U.S. government tell you, Mark?
Well, the U.S. government doesn't have, as far as we know, definitive information about exactly who's holding him or where he is. We do believe that there is information that they have been unable to share with us just because of security reasons and national security clearances and so forth.
Do you think the Syrian government's holding him?
This is what we do believe. Our son's missing in Syria, and it's more than natural that we would appeal to the Syrian government, who is the sovereign entity over the state of Syria, to find him. They have the best resources. They have access to their own country. So we've appealed to them in many ways, many times, to help us find Austin and bring him safely home.
I want to turn to Austin Tice in his own words, explaining why he made the decision to go to Syria. In a Facebook post on July 25, 2012, Austin wrote, quote, "We kill ourselves every day with McDonald's and alcohol and 1,000 other drugs, but we've lost the sense that there actually are things out there worth dying for. We've given away our freedoms piecemeal to robber barons, but we're too complacent to do much but criticize those few who try to point out the obvious." He goes on to say, quote, "So that's why I came here to Syria. And if it's why I like being here now, right in the middle of a brutal and still uncertain civil war. Every person in this country fighting for their freedom wakes up every day and goes to sleep every night with the knowledge that death could visit them at any moment. They accept that reality as the price of freedom." That's your son in his own words. Yes. Do you feel that our government is doing enough to locate him and get him out?
We feel like there's always more that could be done. And you mentioned Amy, Reporters Without Borders, in the intro. They've been helping us tremendously throughout this whole process, and now are helping us raise awareness of Austin's situation.
Well, we are joined by Delphine Algan. In fact, she was on Democracy Now! Yesterday. She's U.S. Director of Reporters Without Borders, which is based in Paris, France, with the second-in-command at Reporters Without Borders, who was one of the first to get to the massacre site in Paris. But today, Delphine, we have you on for another reason, though you addressed the Austin Tice case yesterday. You're in Boston today. Talk about your work in Washington and what you're learning about what's happening with Austin, what you feel needs to be done, what the U.S. government is doing or not doing.
So I've been working with the Tice since September 2012, trying to help them as much as possible, because it's Reporters Without Borders work to do so, to help the families of kidnapped journalists. So we have helped them to get in touch with former hostages, try to help them to get some contacts with Arab-speaking media. And when they asked Reporters Without Borders to help them to raise awareness about Austin case in the U.S., of course we say, okay, of course we're in. And then we convinced the ad agency in New York to prepare a campaign that we will launch very, very soon in the next week. And right now we are calling for major media all around the U.S. to join this campaign, to be partners of the campaign, and to accept to publish on their website for free banners, Free Austin Tice. We have been working on the ideas of the blindfold. When a journalist is missing, when Austin Tice is missing, in a sense, we are all blindfolded because we are deprived of information. So that's really the main mission now, and because public awareness, public pressure will make a difference to help us to bring Austin back home. We know that it's not a ransom issue, it's really a political issue, and that's why public pressure will help in that case.
And but Delphine, in previous kidnapping cases, the government has attempted to dissuade families from going public and sought to use back channels, basically, to find a way to free kidnapped foreigners in the Middle East. Have you got any pushback from the government on this campaign?
So we have seen the tragic results of many hostage cases recently, and I don't want to bring back this barbarity again. And I guess their administration realized that their policy was not exactly successful, and that's why the White House launched this policy review to try to see how they can better secure the release of their hostage. And we are, of course, with the families like Deborah, Mark, but also Diane Foley and other families of American hostage or former hostage, pushing for better cooperation between the administration and the family, a better share of information, and also to try to review this policy of no negotiation. There's a difference between refusing paying a ransom and only considering a military option. And we are so welcoming this review, which was so much needed because a lot needs to be improved.
The families of all 4 Americans kidnapped by ISIS in Syria were told they could face prosecution if they paid money to free their loved ones, ransom. Diane Foley, the mother of slain journalist James Foley, spoke to ABC News last year.
We had to beg.
The higher we went, the more difficult the
Right. And we were an annoyance, it felt at some levels, that, you know, they really didn't have time for us. We were told very clearly 3 times that it was illegal for us to try to ransom our son out, and that we had possibility of being prosecuted. I was surprised that there was so little compassion.
That was Diane Foley, the mother of James Foley, who was beheaded last year. This has shown a rift between the families and the government. You're saying that yours is not an issue of ransom, but are you feeling the same? The other issues they have raised now as families come together is the lack of information they get from the government. Mark, what are your thoughts on what the government is doing? Is Austin part of this, the case of your son, Austin Tice, part of this review that President Obama has called for?
Well, yes, it is. And we have been given the opportunity to participate in the review. You know, we're very gratified that President Obama recognized that there are problems with the way that hostage situations and the families of hostages are dealt with. So, and yes, we've felt that. Clearly, there are issues around sharing information with the families. I already mentioned that. There are issues internally in the government among agencies and departments in how effectively and efficiently information is shared there.
Were you ever threatened the way Diane Foley says she was threatened with prosecution if she dared to raise money?
We heard the same advice, yes.
Meaning the State Department gave you the same advice?
Well, we heard the same advice. However, you know, I just want to say that, again, we haven't had to deal directly with the issue of ransom or concessions. You know, we still haven't had anyone acknowledge or claim responsibility for Austin's captivity. So, you know, it's really not our place to speak about that issue. However, there are a number of other issues, like I said, information sharing, both externally and internally. Also, just the idea of protecting the hostage themselves. One of the things that we had a very steep learning curve on, and the other families have as well, is, you know, when an adult child goes missing, they have their whole life that they've left here, and a lot of our time goes to trying to protect and manage Austin's identity and his assets so that when he comes back, he has a life to come back to. We believe that, you know, there are things that the government could do to help facilitate those processes and those efforts by the families. Well, you know, for instance, financial obligations or issues around access to their social media, Facebook, Twitter, which, you know, as an adult, Austin was no longer sharing all his passwords with us. I mean, he was a grown man, 30 years old when he left. But it's extremely difficult because of privacy regulations and rules for us to be able to get access to the things that we need to protect those communication feeds and social media identity. We think that there are things that the government could put in place to simplify that for the families.
And Deborah, has there been any indication from the government that they believe he is still in captivity somewhere?
Yes, we have had information from our government assuring us that Austin is hanging in there, and so we're still working toward getting him home. You were asking about our government, and what has happened is Austin is suspended between two governments, and trying to take possession of him has become another part of his captivity, and keeping information from us sort of keeps us from inserting ourselves into that picture, and so that's where our frustration lies.
Can you explain further, and have you appealed directly to the Syrian government?
We have been able to appeal directly to the Syrian government, and they have assured us that they will do everything they can to find Austin, to help us bring him home safely. And what we're more interested in is we would like to feel more a part of the team of our government that's getting information, that they would share information with us so that we can use that information with our channels and our connections to reach in for our son.
And to your knowledge, the area where he disappeared from, was it in government controlled areas, or was it in rebel controlled areas?
Well, that area at that time was very fluid. And so it's really hard to say who had control at the moment that Austin went missing. That's part of the problem.
Would you like to make a direct statement to whoever is holding your son?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
We'd like to say, first of all, please take care of Austin, keep him well, keep him safe. We don't believe that anyone is benefiting from Austin continuing to be held and not allowed to come home. We would appeal to you to treat him well, keep him safe, and return him to us as soon as you can. And Austin, if you can hear this, we love you. We're doing everything we can to bring you home as soon as possible.
And Deborah, you could look right into that camera.
I would just like to say that everyone has a mother, and I'm Austin's mother, and I appeal to you in the same way that your mother would appeal for you, that you let my son be released, keep him safe, and give him back to our family. He has 2 brother-in-laws to meet. He has siblings to congratulate on life accomplishments, and we are so ready to have him home.
And finally, Delphine Elgan, you working at a kind of policy level and having worked in these kind of cases around the world, what you think is most important to happen right now?
Again, I think after more than 2 years of looking for information, trusting the U.S. government to bring Austin safe back home, it's time for public awareness and public pressure, because that's really one thing we can help to bring Austin's back home. And that's why I really want to thank you to help us in this mission. And again, I look forward to work with all the media and major media in the U.S. who already express interest to be part of this campaign.
Well, I want to thank you all for being with us. Delphine Elgan, U.S. Director of Reporters Without Borders, actually speaking to us from Providence, Rhode Island, and Deb Deborah and Mark Tice, thanks so much for being with us. I know these are very difficult times for you, as they have been for the past almost 2.5 years now. Parents of Austin Tice, the American journalist abducted in Syria in August of 2012. Of course, we will continue to follow his case. This is Democracy Now! We'll be back in a minute with an exclusive story. Stay with us.